I could ask Mayor Hardy if you'd like to just make any welcoming comments for the audience tonight.
Great, thank you. I'm Letty. On behalf of the City Council, I wanted to welcome you to the beginning of the budget process. We have a couple of council members in the room, Mary Beth Connolly and Aaron Flynn. There might be some online virtually as well. I know some of us have professional conflicts and couldn't be here, but the bottom line is we are listening. We're at the beginning of the process, and there is no more important decision or process than our budget. The budget should represent our values as a community, and this is an opportunity for you all to weigh in. So we look forward to hearing from you over the next 6 weeks. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you so much, Mayor. And we have Councilmember Flynn in the room and Councilmember Connolly in the room. We have our Finance Director, Kieran Baba, here manning the controls. We have our Commissioner of Revenue here in the room. And Jeff is a member of our HSAC committee. And Sophie was very important in making sure that all the electronics and audiovisual work tonight. So this is both an in-person and a virtual meeting. Thank you all for coming tonight. And as the mayor noted at the very beginning, we are really early in the budget process in terms of its presentation to the City Council. Prior to coming to the City Council, the school board's been working actually for months to develop its budget request. They presented that on Monday night, just 3 days ago. And the Planning Commission has been working with staff on the capital improvements program. So all those things come together along with the city manager's recommendations for the general operating budget to the City Council. We're all working towards final consideration of the budget by May 13th for the City Council. So we have about a month and a half together on this. And then the budget that we're talking about takes effect on July 1st. That's the beginning of the fiscal year for all localities and the state government in Virginia. And so before we get into things, I wanted to get people oriented on the process. And then secondly, all the information that we're going to go over tonight can be found at fallschurchva.gov/budget. Or if you just go to the home page of the city webpage, it'll take you to the budget information. And so the budget book is there, the capital improvements program is there, the schedule I just discussed. Any meetings that we have, including this town hall meeting, we'll post the videos at this link. And comments, if you have them, you can send them in just simply to budget@fallschurchva.gov or to City Council or to City Manager at fallschurchva.gov. So the theme of this year's budget is strengthening our foundations. And we have an opportunity that comes to the city because of some of the trends that are happening in the city where we can take a step to really think about what's most important for us as a city and try to take strong steps in the direction of strengthening the things we love the most about the city. The City Council, just about 3 weeks ago, adopted a really important document for the community where they laid out strategic priorities in the areas of environmental sustainability, in transportation, and economic development, in housing, and in good governance. These 5 areas where they organize some of the strategies where the council is seeking to move the community over the 2-year term. And that's in addition to the city's comprehensive plan and many other planning documents, but this is really the council statement of priorities for the coming 2 years. So the budget attempts to address each of those strategic areas and also strengthen the organization so we can handle the growth that's happening. And so here's just a few numbers in terms of the context that's happening. One, our existing businesses, which is really the core of our business community. Many of them are growing right now and thriving. We're also in a period of new construction, and anybody can see that. In the commercial realm, we have a new office building that we just had a ribbon cutting for about a month ago, a new hotel, which we'll be having a ribbon cutting in probably just a few weeks, as well as the hotel that's been refurbished by Godfrey's. So really kind of 2 new hotels that are operating in the city, 2 new grocery stores, a Whole Foods, and then the West End's going to have a grocery store, and 2 new theaters, including the Creative Cauldron Community Theater, as well as Founders Row is under construction at last for the new theater, which is really the anchor of the Founders Row development in terms of the restaurants and other commercial activity at Founders Row. In addition to that commercial activity, we have over 1,500 housing units that will be coming online in the City of Falls Church over the next 18 months or so. And that's a 22% growth in the housing stock for the city, about a 13% associated growth in population. So this is an era of great dynamism and growth in the city. In addition to that private investment, the city's been very successful in getting federal and state grants, as well as some regional grants, and putting them to work in the city. We've got about $67 million worth of projects that we're administering in the city right now, many of them in the transportation realm to make the city more walkable and safe for all users, bikers, and make our streets more accessible. And over the CIP, which we'll talk about tonight, looking ahead, more of that, 43 additional capital projects totaling $190 million. So really significant public investments in addition to that private investment. So here's a few numbers, kind of top-line numbers for the proposed budget. Both the general government and the schools, in terms of local funding, will be growing at about $3.7 million each in the coming year. As I mentioned, the school board has finished their budget process and has presented that to the city council. Now the city council will be the final determinant in terms of how much money the general government and the schools ultimately get through this budget process. We are trying to strengthen our local dollar investment in affordable housing, and I'll talk about that tonight. And then WMATA, Metro Rail and Metro Bus, many of you all may have been seeing in the news that they have fiscal issues as they emerge from the pandemic. They had a lot of federal relief money that's going away, and there's a gap now. The city's share of that gap would be $1 million increase relative to what we're paying right now. That's fully funded in this proposed budget. In addition to, those are operating budget items. In addition to that, let me talk a little bit about the capital numbers, that's sort of the high-level numbers. Our debt service number is $12.1 million. That's a slight decrease over the current year. But for people who've been watching this budget process for a long time, like Tina Ehrman, who's participating virtually, traditionally the city's carried between $6 and $8 million of annual debt service. And we really stepped up to accomplish the renovation of City Hall, the new library, and then most importantly, the Meridian High School. And so that's been a big part of the city's financial management over the past 6 years or so, is taking that obligation on. And we've done that with use of money that's coming in from the West Falls project. So their lease payments are $4.6 million. That money comes in and it goes straight back out to pay for the debt service for those new facilities. And that's been a large part of the way that the city's been able to actually reduce the tax rate, even as that those public investments came online. In addition, the city built up capital reserves to make sure we were in a sound financial condition as we took on these major projects. And now the council has directed that we should draw those reserves down and invest those dollars in the community. So a $9.6 million increase in the budget comes from the use of capital reserves for transportation projects and other like improvements throughout the city. In terms of tax rates and fees, the real estate tax rate that this budget is built around is a rate of $1.22. That's a 1 penny reduction from the current rate of $1.23 per $100 of assessed value. The budget doesn't have any other changes proposed for like the car tax or other business taxes. We are recommending some changes to our utility fees, basically to keep up with cost of living and inflation increases. So a 3.6% increase for the base rates that all of our homeowners and commercial businesses pay for both the stormwater utility and the sanitary sewer utility. On the sanitary sewer side, the fees that developers pay when they make a new connection to the sanitary sewer system, we're proposing a 10% increase in those fees to help us pay for the purchase of additional capacity and other needs in the system to handle the growth. Most everybody has gotten everybody has gotten their real estate assessment notices. Generally in the residential realm, a 3.2% growth is what is on average for property owners in the city and the residential sphere. Because of the new construction, the commercial is growing 19%, and that's been very helpful in terms of meeting the needs that come with the growth associated with that commercial activity. So for the median homeowner's tax bill, this chart shows a couple of things. The line graph on the top is the trends, the 5 to 6 year trends for your average homeowner's real estate tax bill. And so for this proposed budget, it would be a 2.4% increase in the average homeowner's real estate tax bill, which is the equivalent of about $271. The median home in the city is now just under $1 million, which is a pretty incredible thing to contemplate. And it's something that's happening regionally, but affordable housing is a major concern and a major priority for the City Council to try to address that. The real estate taxes have been trending down, as I mentioned, about a 12.5-cent decrease over the past 4 years and a penny decrease in the proposed budget. So, all right. Just one last note on revenues. Because of the new grocery stores coming online, new restaurants, and this commercial activity, we do have pretty strong forecasts on revenue growth across all of those sectors. So meals taxes, just as an example, we're looking at projecting a 27% increase in meals tax receipts. Hotel taxes, about a 60% increase, and that's partly the recovery from the pandemic, but also a brand new hotel coming online, and then the meeting house at Godfrey's with its refurbishment. And that hotel is getting great reviews as well, and a great amenity in the city. So I mentioned at the outset, when we're talking about where the money will go in this budget, the theme being strengthening our foundations, trying to take the context of the present time with the growth that's happening, with the dynamism in our economy, and trying to use those funds to make the city strong, and to do so with investments in people, improving and modernizing our processes about how we get our business done as a city, investments in core infrastructure, and addressing the strategic initiatives that have been identified by the City Council. And those initiatives really come out from the City Council's work and meeting with the community, knocking on doors, and countless town hall meetings. So one of the things that I'm recommending, and with the chief, our new chief of police, Chief Fard, is some additional staff in public safety. So we have 6 additional positions proposed, 3 police officers and 2 emergency communications technicians, the people who work in our dispatch booth. An additional civilian position to make sure that policies and procedures which are intended to keep the public safe and our officers safe in all of our interactions with the public. That's a request in the public safety budget. So Chief Fard will be with the City Council at work session on the 15th of April, and we'll talk about these proposals in detail. In addition, we're proposing to expand the library hours an additional hour on the Saturday and Sunday. We're proposing a Vietnamese community outreach position, which would be a contracted position that came out of a lot of our interaction with the East End area plan over the past year of their the business owners recommended to the city that we have that additional capacity, and we're following through on that. Updating the city's website so it's more user-friendly and has the information that the public can use in terms of doing business with the city, or just finding out about key things that are happening in the city. Other things we're looking to do in terms of strengthening our foundations and modernizing city operations investment in technology and rolling out new technology applications across the city. So we're asking for a project manager in the IT department to help accelerate that work. An additional, we have 4 people in human resources, so we're asking for an additional administrative support position for there, additional contracted legal services for the city attorney, and then also to help us manage the change that is happening both within our organization, but also the population growth that's occurring in the city, and making sure that the city is performing in this period of growth. I carried out a reorganization of the city manager's office in September, and I'm asking council to sustain funding for that for 2 deputy city manager positions that would go forward. And one to really focus on internal process improvements, and another to help work with planning and public works in particular to deliver the capital projects to make the city more walkable and safer with complete streets and good infrastructure that will serve the city well into the future. Investment in our workforce is really key. It is people that get everything done here, and I'm asking for the council to fund compensation for our workforce at 6%. We are still dealing with an inflationary environment, and this is and looking at what's happening in the marketplace. What we're asking to keep our pay schedules competitive and rewarding for our workforce. Some investments in environmental sustainability. Many of our neighborhoods have already experienced the conversion to LED street lighting. We want to carry that forward into the coming year. We are bringing more electric vehicles into the city fleet, along with charging stations at our city facilities so that those city vehicles can be charged up. We also have charging stations for the public here at City Hall as well. Whenever we do upgrades to our facilities, and we have some major ones at the community center and at the Aurora House where we're modernizing our HVAC equipment, we want to do so in a way that will lower our energy intensity usage. At the community center, for instance, we're going with a geothermal system to try to lower how much energy we consume to heat that very large, heat and cool that very large building, which is also part of our resilience to climate change. That's a cooling center when we have power outages and things like that over the summertime. And we're working to study our facilities across the city for solar installations. In the meantime, we're purchasing all of our solar through Solar Rex, which is going into the market, and where there's solar is being produced, the city is powering all of our government operations with solar power. But the more we can generate locally, the better. In transportation, we're going to talk about this both in the operating budget and in the capital budget. In the operating budget, we have been behind in funding basic things like paving and taking care of our traffic signals. And so this budget tries to take steps forward where we can take on more of those basic maintenance obligations. So the City Council last year put additional money into that, and we continue that into this fiscal year with $1.5 million for repaving our streets and taking care of sidewalks and signals. When we do repave our streets, that's where we follow the bike master plan, and we install bike lanes where they're called for through the bike plan. We also update all sidewalks, curb cuts to make sure that they're fully ADA accessible and updated. A lot of our old curb cuts are not today, so every time we repave a street, we make those improvements. A couple of notes on affordable housing. The budget proposes $500,000 in support, local funds in support of affordable housing. A portion of that is to sustain a program that we began and really kind of ramped up last year, where we try to assist members of the community that are about 40% area median income with regular subsidies for their rent so that they can afford rents in the city. And so this 150K is to sustain that. And then $350,000 goes into the Affordable Housing Fund for future projects to preserve affordable housing. And we have affordable housing that is committed right now, and some of those commitments are expiring. And so one of the objectives is to extend the dates that they're committed to affordable housing. We've been successful in getting grant money for affordable housing, including $7 million of Amazon money that came as part of the Amazon headquarters, and that's been very helpful to the city. And we just got a notice of an $850,000 award with the help of Congressman Byers' office that we'll use for the acquisition of affordable housing in the Virginia Village area. Three big things we're going to be working on at the policy level, and encourage everybody to be tuned into this. We're updating our affordable living policy. That really sets out our guidelines of how we negotiate with developers for affordable housing, but also lays out broader strategies on how we can preserve and build new affordable housing. Looking to develop more precise strategies on how we can preserve some of our really important dedicated affordable units in the city, and then also starting the planning process for the future of Virginia Village, and we would do that in partnership with Wesley Housing. I have just a few notes on the CIP, and we're going to talk about the CIP in detail with the City Council next Monday, 4 days from now on April 8th. The major part of the CIP is in the area of transportation, and most of that is federal, state, and regional grants that we put to work in the city. All of those projects, whether they're intersection improvements or like the Park Avenue Great Streets project, they're designed with a mindset of complete streets so that they're safe for all users of those streets. A couple of notes just in terms of debt and things like that. We're not proposing to issue any debt for the next 3 years through FY28. With the exception of in the sanitary sewer fund, we are proposing debt to handle the capacity purchase that we need to make, as well as some peak flow mitigation measures that we're working on with Fairfax County to protect downstream users from rain-initiated surges that happen in the sanitary sewer system. We plan to draw down the capital reserves with $20 million from capital reserves over the 6-year planning horizon for the CIP. And we're bringing in $63 million of grants that have already been announced and awarded to the city. So that's really tremendous. I am asking the council for support for 3 additional project managers to help move these projects forward. We currently have 2 transportation project managers. This would move us to 3 project managers. We have 1 person in facilities who handles projects. We'd move that to 2. And we have 1 person who's working our utility projects and move that to 2 as well. And so that would cover stormwater and sanitary. A couple of things that are noteworthy for anyone who has kids at Meridian. You may have noticed that the concession stand and some of the stadium complex was not addressed as part of the renovation of the school or of the new school. And so we're putting $600,000 for the school board to carry that work out. And I think they hope to get it done this summer, as well as replacing the turf field at Meridian. And we're looking to, with a combination of local dollars and developer voluntary concessions, to update the play equipment at Berman Park. We also have an important initiative that's in the CIP in the out years in FY28, our operations center, which is where all of our Department of Public Works staff who take care of all of our streets, our sanitary sewer system, our stormwater systems, those men and women work out of this center. It is a center that was built in the 50s and the 1960s, and we do want to look at providing a healthier and safer work environment for those employees. We've studied that in the context of activity we know is going to happen in the Gordon Road Triangle. We've looked at alternate sites for this facility, and this is, I believe, the best site for it. And we will try to do, we're early in the planning process for that, but we've got sort of the basics of what our requirements are to operate that center effectively. And from there, we can then engage with the community and potentially with neighboring property owners about the most creative redevelopment of that property. But we've got several years before that project comes online, but the CIP really initiates the planning process for that. In terms of traffic calming and pedestrian safety, we've got $200,000, which is sustaining the level we've had for the last couple of years for community member initiated petitions for traffic calming across the city. The Greenway Downs project was sort of a special case, and we had a grant of $600,000 to do all of the streets along Greenway Downs that tie into Route 29. We've gone through the neighborhood vetting process, and now those plans are with VDOT for their review and approval, and we look forward to getting that project done. The Cavalier Trail, we have pedestrian bridges that cross Trips Run, and we're assessing, doing engineering assessments and designs for replacing those as those get to end of life, and particularly the one at the end of Westmoreland. You may have noticed that's a bridge that is begging to be replaced over the next 2 years or so. New sidewalks as part of the Missing Links program. We have put some of the ARPA money towards making the city more walkable and having new sidewalks put in. Our target areas are Wallace Street, to tie in with the new sidewalks we built on South Maple and on Tenor Hill. And so that'll be one more important connection. And then we have a whole series of missing links along Hillwood Avenue, which would be sort of the lion's share of the new sidewalk projects proposed. We're also planning to use some of this ARPA money for new bus shelters to make transit as comfortable and out of the weather as possible for everyone who uses Metro Bus. So that's the kind of the wrap up, sort of a high level summary of key initiatives that are in the budget. Again, with a focus in every one of these initiatives, trying to carry forward the initiatives of the City Council to do projects in a way that is sustainable, to try to move the needle on being more environmentally, less energy intensive, use less carbon, move our fleets towards more electric vehicles, bring solar into the city. All of these things, while at the same time fortifying our processes so that we can serve our community members well and efficiently, even as we grow. And that's a big challenge for us. It has our attention about how we can do that effectively. And those are some of the key things that we're trying to get accomplished in FY25. So let me stop there. And now this is your time to provide suggestions, provide your commentary, or ask questions about what's proposed for the coming fiscal year. I'm going to ask Kieran just to keep an eye on folks who might be participating on the Teams meeting. But for people who would like to speak, I will ask that we take a moment to get the microphone to you, and that's really for the benefit of people who are watching or who may watch in the future, because this video will be posted and people will want to hear what your questions are. Yes, sir. Come in. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you very much for the presentation. So, do you think the audio is okay for online?
Yeah, if you're in the mic, we can hear you.
Okay. So a couple of things stood out, in particular, just to start with the $415,000 for the Berman Park project. There have been, studies that have shown that actually investing in programming at parks, so things to do there, maybe a person to do activities, things with kids, like a $3,000 program for staff can get more utilization out of a park than $30,000 in new spending at that park. So it does, I live right by Berman Park, and I think, if $415,000 would make it the most utilized and joyful park in the world, I think that's great. I think there's probably opportunities to think through, what are we offering to the local community at that park? Is there different after-school things? Is there a thing on the weekends, different learning and engagement opportunities? And that gets a little bit into sort of kind of tactical urbanism as a topic, basically thinking, can we start a little bit smaller? Can we try to figure out what we're doing, be a little bit more experimental, And as we try things and get more conviction in terms of what could actually work, we can save a lot of money along the way and get started faster. I would also say the same thing for the bridge reconstruction project over Trips Run, $800,000 for that bridge. I go over that bridge quite a lot. It's a really important bridge, but it could be an opportunity, instead of to allocating almost $1 million to a project like that, maybe thinking, okay, could we take a little bit more of a participatory process here? Could we get a little bit more neighborhood voluntary engagement, get a better sense of what we're doing, and possibly look at ways that, that wouldn't necessarily cost $800,000 in expenditures right off the bat. A couple of the points. One, in terms of staffing, urban forestry needs staffing. I think that they are quite overburdened at the moment. They don't have the capacity to both tend to all of the sites in the city and have any sense of long-term strategic management. So a lot of the city's investments in green spaces, native plants, Herman Park, these things are not being maintained because they don't have the staff for it. So I think that's really important, and that can actually dovetail with more funding for programming at some of these park sites. So it's not necessarily only on urban forestry staff, but if you get more community initiatives, neighborhood involvement, and actually funding to pay people to sort of coordinate and be involved in those types of things, because volunteerism, it has its limits. The last comment I'd make with respect to, transportation, walkable city, all those types of things, is in some respects there are structural barriers that determine what we can or can't do. So for example, if the street width and if the lanes have to be a certain width due to the equipment that the city has, say the snow plows or the fire trucks, that means that we actually can't make more space for sidewalks or bike lanes or whatever else we'd have. So I think it would be interesting to look at, can the city procure vehicles or different types of equipment to basically facilitate our ability to do more on some of those streets where we could narrow streets, make more room for pedestrians, make more room for people of all ages and abilities to use those types of things. And again, looking into the equipment, right? If getting a narrower snow plow could allow us to narrow street widths so we have a lot more room on those complete streets and public spaces for everything else, I think that would be a great win. And I would just point to one more thing which was brought up at some of the city hall meetings last year about some long overdue accessibility studies around disability access and things like that in the city. Long overdue, like a decade overdue. And so that has to be a part of what we're doing. That has to be a priority along with other things. And yeah, just wrap that up with, for some of these really large budget expenditures, like improving park sites or improving things at a certain location, maybe when we talk about project management for some of these internal and external processes, that sort of concept of tactical urbanism could be a part of that, right? Instead of starting with $500,000 budget expenditure, basically seeing, okay, so can we take some time, experiment a little, get a better sense of what we're doing here, and go iteratively instead of just throwing a lot of money at it and hoping the money will solve the problem. Thank you. Yeah.
As we're waiting for additional comments, I appreciate those comments. I think those resonate.
Mr. Shields, we have a question. In the chat, it says, thank you for the opportunity. Glad to see 3 police positions to be added, but do we pay enough to retain them after the 2-year training? In the past, it seemed we were the training grounds, and once certified, they would jump to the county to make more money.
Public safety is very competitive right now. There's a nationwide shortage of people who are willing to step forward to be police officers at the current time. And so many of our neighbors are at 15 to 20% vacancy rates within their police departments. And so there's a lot of competition for talented people. The city has been fortunate that we have been able to keep our police department well-staffed through, we had a period where we were about 15% to 20% vacant in the police department. And largely through the works of a couple of key people in the department, we have filled all of those positions. So it's something we have to keep an eye on to make sure that our compensation is competitive. So we appreciate the comment.
I have another question. Any money for protected bike lanes so kids can bike safely to school?
So as I mentioned, we have about $70 million worth of transportation projects that are planned for the city. All of those are with a mindset of complete streets so that they are safe for all users, including bikers. And we're right now in the midst of doing the update to the Bike Master Plan. And we've had a couple of engagement opportunities with the community on that, and we want to have several more and really talk with neighbors about some of the key corridors. West Street, Great Falls Street, a safe route to get to the Meridian campus. Those are some of the priorities that were identified as key corridors that we're studying. We're putting together profiles in terms of how bike lanes would work on those streets and what sorts of changes would need to be made within the right-of-way to accommodate bike lanes. So that is ongoing right now. In terms of some of the initial estimates that are part of that Bike Master Plan, it depends on how extensive the changes to the right-of-way are associated with those lanes. And so we're going to get some more information on that. If they are simple changes, they are accommodated in this budget. If they're more complex changes, changing the curb and gutter and things like that, we would then need to put those into the capital program and fund those in the future. I will note Park Avenue is another one of the key corridors that's being studied for bike lanes. So from the library to Washington Street is part of the Great Streets Project. And those plans, which are with VDOT right now for review, will not have dedicated bike lanes, but instead the whole street will be designed as a bike boulevard so that cars, people, and bicycles can coexist safely within the right-of-way and still allow on-street parking, which was an important concern that the business community has traditionally had in that area and had through that planning process. So Park Avenue is then west of North Washington Street, of Virginia Avenue. We're now studying whether dedicated bike lanes would fit within the right-of-way there and having conversations with the community about the impacts of that.
I can ask one more question.
Of course.
This will be quick.
Sure.
Could you just talk about the reasoning for why you're looking to add the 3 new police officers to the budget and the justification, what's going on with the city for that?
Yeah. It's an important question. And so what drives police staffing levels are the calls for service, as well as sort of the basic operational posture that we have at any given time. And so clearly the growth that's happening in the city does generate more calls for service. And so when the police are just running from call to service to call to service, then neighborhood policing, sort of being visible in the community, or proactive enforcement of speeding and traffic issues becomes more difficult because the officers are going constantly from one call to the next. And that's the status quo. And so that's what the chief is trying to address, is to have shift levels so that the police department can be more in a posture of being more proactive and sort of more community oriented, as opposed to just constantly running from call to call.
Is that anticipatory about future growth, or that's just to cover needs now and might need to add more later?
So Chief Fard is going to articulate with the city council that this is really to meet what the department is facing today. And so we will be asking, I think, for additional resources as the city grows in the coming years. So I think Chief Fard is not viewing this as sort of a one-off. He did ask for more positions than are actually contained in this budget. And so I think he's looking, and that's partly because you can only take in so many people at a time. You have to train them, you have to make sure that they're the right fit for the community and for the department. And so you can't, 3 was sort of a manageable number. But I think his professional opinion is going to be that there will need to be more resources in the future as well.
So it's 6 total for the police department.
That's right.
And how many non-uniformed residents in the department beyond that?
So it's 3 uniformed, and then 2 dispatchers, and then 1 civilian position. And
Other positions non-sworn, right?
yeah, that civilian position is what we call non-sworn, so that's a distinction that matters within the police department. Our uniformed or our sworn force is right now at 36, and we'd be going to 39. And that's a number that's been pretty steady for a very long time. I think the records were that we had 32 sworn in like 1985. And so they've been very sort of steady. And I think their assessment in terms of modern policing and what the needs are is we do need additional personnel. And I agree with the chief on that. Yeah.
Breakdown.
Thank you.
Yeah, on that topic, is there any breakdown when you mention the different calls, the different services, paramedic staff being added, but what those calls are actually going for, and then corresponding what the public safety staff will be focused on or sort of prioritized when it comes to, what that department is orienting for? Because, I don't know myself. I sort of doubt a lot of those calls are potentially demanding responses to violence in the way that we might see in other areas, but might be elderly people needing care or different emergency things, mental health, whatever's going on. So basically, I was wondering if you have an idea of, what those service calls are coming from, and if on the public safety side, the orientation is sort of matching to that.
It's a good question, and I'm not prepared to answer that in detail, but those are the right questions to be asking. And so I think Chief Fard will be discussing that with the council when he briefs the council on April 15th. And that'll be televised and encourage people to tune into that discussion. Any other questions coming in from the Teams call?
I keep seeing somebody trying to type, but I haven't seen the product yet.
Okay. I'm comfortable with silence. Is everybody else comfortable with silence? Well, I will say this. I'm very grateful for everybody to come out tonight. And as the mayor noted at the beginning, this is sort of the council's now getting familiar with the proposals that are in the budget. And they'll be spending the rest of this month and well into May working through the issues, I think following up on questions that have been asked tonight. And then working towards consensus and taking a vote on the plans for the coming fiscal year, again, on May 13th. So please do stay tuned and talk with your neighbors about it. This is really one of the really important levers that we have for setting our course for the future year by year. And then in the capital plan, looking multi-year into the future. And so it's a great way to help shape the direction that the city's going in. So appreciate your participation, and thanks everybody for showing up tonight, and we'll keep the dialogue going.
Thank you.
I think that's a wrap.
Yes. Yes.